Hello and welcome to another episode of Dad vs. Daughter. I'm Tim the Dad, and as you can see, I'm wearing my Titanic shirt because this game actually has the Titanic in it. This is Crossing Oceans, which is a re-implementation of the game Transatlantic. Now, this is an economic type of game where we're going to be controlling shipping companies. We're going to be placing ships and trade houses throughout the entire world. So let's just get it to the table. I'm going to walk you through setup and the gameplay. Then I'm going to tell you what I think. So let's check it out. So during setup, the board should look something like this with the components where they're at on the board. You're going to take all of those tiles that have those numbers on those. You're going to separate those out between 0 and 9. You're going to shuffle those up individually for each of the different eras, and then you're going to stack them on top of each other. So starting with the 9s, then put the 8s on top, and then the 7s, and so forth. You are going to have ones that have the C areas on the back, and you'll see we have some with the red X. So if this were a 3-player game instead of a 4-player game, you would actually flip that one so that the X shows face up, knowing that this section is off limits for that game based on the player count. But in a 4-player game, all of the 5 C areas are going to be open. The tile is also going to tell you where you're going to be placing it. In this case, the aerial is going to be placed in Buenos Aires. And you will put a red lantern on each one of those to show that those are the oldest ships in each of the sea areas. Next, you're going to take those tiles that have the zeros on those, you're going to shuffle those up, and then you are going to deal 1 to each player. So in a 4-player game, you're going to have 4. That one that's left over, you're going to flip it over, and that's actually going to go into the docks, and the docks are over here. You're going to match it up to where that matching flag is at. So for instance, I will put that one there, and then I will put the matching flag on top of that. So let's say the red player had the 1870, which would be the oldest ship here. They're going to get that. They're going to get the matching flag. So in this case, they'll get a black flag. That's going to go into their personal area. And then because they have the oldest ship, they are going to get the Cutty Sark. Now think of the Cutty Sark as kind of like the first player marker. Each player is also going to get their own player board, their own player aid, as well as 10 of their ship captains and 7 of their trade houses. So because the red player has control of the Cutty Sark, they're actually going to be placing their captain on that, and then the other players would do the same. Each player is also going to start with a contract, and for that ship that they got with the 0 back, they're also going to get one of the wild card flags. All players will also start with 150 pounds. We will also put the number 1s out in the ship market that you see up here. And then each player is going to take one of their captains, and they are going to place it in the middle of the rondel. After all of that, the board should look something like this, with each player having their captain out on one of the ships, with the exception of the Scotia, which is in New York in the North Atlantic. That ship will never have a captain, and it will always start as a neutral ship. But that's all there is to setup. Now, the way the turn order works is you're going to go through steps 1, 2, and 3, with 2 being optional. So the first step is you can place one of your available ships that you have. You've purchased it, or you have that as one of your starting ships. You're going to be able to place that out into one of the open areas. Or if you don't, or choose not to place a ship, then you'll be able to get a contract. And you'll just add that contract to your personal supply. The second step is optional. This is where you can spend those contracts. You can spend one contract to gain 20 pounds, or get a coal and place it on any of your ships, or you can use it to take extra spaces when you do the rondel action. So when you are moving around the rondel, I mentioned, step 2 is optional. You can pay one of the contracts, and normally you're moving either 1, 2, or 3 spaces on that rondel. However, if you pay that contract, you can move more than those 3 spaces. The only stipulation is you can't end on where you began. So let's say that the red player paid a contract, they started on the blue ribbon, they can move all the way around to the ship action if they wanted. Clearly, they would probably stop here because they can move that 3 spaces for free. But just for illustration, I wanted to show they could come all the way around and just be on the space before the space they started on. You can spend 2 contracts to place one of your trade houses out onto the board, and you'll also get one of the trade tokens in order to put on your player board. And you'll see that they're going to go under those various spots there. And the first one is free, but then you can see the next one would cost 30 pounds, and then the next would cost 60, and then finally the last one would cost 90. So you can never place more than going past here. On a player's first turn of the game, they can actually take their captain and they can place it on any of the locations on the rondel. So let's just say with that red player being the first, they're going to start here at the ship action. And you'll notice that there are actually 2 ship actions on the rondel. So by taking that ship action, that's going to allow you to purchase 1, 2, or 3 ships, either in combination from the docks or from the market. Now, when you purchase a ship from the docks, you are only going to look at the purchase price. So you can see that the Germanic actually has a purchase price of 60 pounds. And if you were to buy this, you would get this, place it in your personal area, and you would also get its matching flag. But if you purchase from the market, you'll notice in addition to that cost of the ship, for each of the 6 spaces, there is actually an additional cost. So here in the first spot, you would have to pay an additional 10 pounds, then 20, 30, 40, all the way up to 60. So for instance, let's say that the red player had enough that they could purchase this city of Berlin. So they would take this ship and its matching flag and put that in their play area. And let's say that that's all that they wanted to buy. Now, when the ship action is taken, you actually have to have 3 empty spaces in the market. So what will happen is the ships are going to slide down until we have the last 3 spaces open. And they're going to go over into the docks. So this one with the red star is going to go to the docks here. The one from the green will go over here. Now, let's say that there was already a ship of one of those flags in the docks. That existing ship would actually get kicked out and it would be out of the game, and that ship that slid over would then take its place. The rest of these ships are going to slide all the way over until we have those 3 remaining, and then we take off of the next numbered stack, which in this case is going to be the 2s. We're going to be placing those ships out into the market to fill up those last 3 spots. And then we're going to be taking the corresponding flags and placing those on the ships. So a red and white flag, a green and white flag, and a red star. Now this market and those tiles act as a timer for the game, because when we get to the number 9s, those are HQs, no longer ships. Those do not go into the dock area. So when we have exhausted that stack of tiles over there, that's going to signify the end of the game. We're going to look at the first player. They are going to actually put 3 coal next to their captain on the rondel. And when they take a turn, you're going to remove one of those coal. And when they run out of coal, then that signifies the end of the game. Basically, that is to track those last 3 turns. The next action we have on the rondel is the blue ribbon. And what that represents is a transatlantic race. We're going to take a look at all the ships that are in the North Atlantic sea spaces, and we're going to look and see which ones are ready. So all of the steamships should have a coal on them to show that they're in a ready state. The Scotia does not have to put a coal on there because it is a neutral ship as well. You're going to compare the speeds. So the Scotia is at 15 knots and the Umbria is at 18 knots. So what happens is you take the blue ribbon, you are going to basically discard that coal, and the Umbra is going to win the race because 18 is greater than 15, they will actually get one of these blue ribbon tokens, and they're going to be able to place that on their player board. So in this case, that would go here. At the end of the game, you're going to be looking at the number of flags that you have, and you're going to multiply that based on where that last token is on that line. So let's say that I had 2 of the blue flags. This would make it worth 10 points. I'd get 5 points apiece. Now let's say that the Umbra and the Scotia were actually tied, then you would actually need to spend 2 coal on that ship in order to win. So when you win, your prize is essentially twice whatever the ship's income is. So in this case, the ship's income is 60 pounds. So you would take 120 pounds for winning the race. The next action is the fleet action. So I would look at all of the ready ships that I have on the board, and I would collect income based on the income of those ships that are ready. So let's say I had one that was 20, one that was 30, and one that was 50 pounds for income. Then I would collect 100 pounds from the bank. Any of those ships that had coal on them, I would remove 1 coal piece. Next, we have the house action, and what that is going to allow us to do that is a little different than what we do in our optional step 2 is that we actually are going to be able to take income from whatever port we're at. So let's say that the green player was the one who was taking the port action. Their ship is actually in Charleston. So what they're going to be able to do is take one of their 7 houses from their supply, and they're going to be able to place it onto that little anchor. So let's say that it was ready and it had a piece of coal on there. So then they would remove that coal. Then they get to choose one of the trade tokens and place that on their board. So let's say that they decided they wanted to place that green one. They would place that right there on their player board. And then you can see the next one will cost 30 pounds. So let's say later in the game that the red player has a ship in this port and they take the house action. You'll notice we already have a green trading house there, but they want to put one of theirs there as well. So they can do that. They can place that. They'll burn that coal, but they have to pay the green player or anybody else that actually had a trading house in that port an additional 30 pounds each. We already talked about the ship action. Next, we have the cargo action, and you're going to choose one of your ready ships that you have out on the board, and you're going to get 10 pounds for every 1,000 tonnage. So let's say in our example here that the Umbria, which has 8,000 tons, we would remove that coal, and we would take 80 pounds. Next up, we have the coal action, and that does not actually require us to spend any coal because we're going to be getting those. We're going to be taking one of these, they call these coal piers, and we're going to be placing that on our player board, just like all of the rest of these. It's going to go here, and obviously it'll go down the board as we receive more of those. But what we're going to be doing is looking and seeing how many of those coal pier icons we have. So we have 2 that we get to start with. So now we have a third. So what we would do is we would take 3 coal from the supply and we would place those evenly on the ships that require coal. Again, the ones with sails do not require coal. Now, a ship can never have more than 3 coal on it at any time. So in this instance, they have 3 coal that they acquired from the supply. Now what they have to do is evenly distribute that coal on their ships on the board. So the Umbria would get 1 coal. The Thermopylae, because it is a sailing vessel, it actually has the icon on there not to add a coal. So the next ship that they have is the Atlantic over here, so they would put a coal there. Now they can either place that 3rd coal either on the Atlantic or the Umbria. They decide they're going to place it on the Umbria. And finally, we have the region action. Now, the region action works a little differently. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking at one of the different regions that are on the board. Again, there's 5, the Atlantic, South Atlantic, Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean, and the Tasmanian Sea. What you're going to do is all the ships that are in a ready status in that area are actually going to generate income. So for instance, let's say that the region action was taken and that player chose the South Atlantic here. There's only one ship that is in a ready status, which is the Atlantic. So they would remove that coal and they would collect the 30 pounds for the income of that ship. That's a nice thing to do when you are the only player who has a ready ship there. It can also be used in order for other players to have to spend their coal on those ships because it is not a optional action, it's mandatory. Now let's say, for instance, that the green player actually had a trade house there. In addition to getting the 30 pounds of income from that ship, they would also get an additional 30 pounds for each of their trading houses in that region. So they only have one, so that's only going to be worth 30 pounds. If they had, say, a second one that on a previous turn they had one there, they would get 30 plus an additional 60. So when we were talking about that first action that players are going to take, let's say that the green player decided that they wanted to put one of their ships in the South Atlantic. So let's say that their ship they have is this one here, which you can see came out in 1901. They would look and see which is the oldest ship here, which we already know is the one that has the red lantern on there. So this ship is actually going to be returned to their owner, in this case, the yellow player. Any coal that might have been on that ship would actually be lost. The green player would place their ship, and every time you do place a ship, you get to place one coal on there. And then, since the area is full, we're going to see which is now the oldest ship. In this case, it is the Atlantic, which is 1871, because the city of Berlin was 1875. So the Atlantic is going to get that red lantern. Now, in case you ever forget, the player aid will show you each one of the actions that requires you to give up coal. Basically, you need to make sure you have coal on that ship in order to take those actions. So this is basically a reminder of what your ready ships are. So when you take the fleet, you've got to look at ones that have the coal. Same with the region, with cargo, whenever you're doing that action, and the one for the blue ribbon, as well as the house. So essentially, that is how the game is played. You're going to be taking turns doing steps 1, 2, and 3, with 2 being optional. You're going to be, placing those ship tiles out as the timer of the game. So when you get to the number 9s, you can notice that the back is black, and that's going to remind you that this is going to be the end of the game when these are all gone. But you can see here's what those look like, with those granting a wild card flag. They also will grant you, when you purchase them, and they're $250 plus wherever they're at in the market, they're going to give you one of those tokens. So this one's going to give you a coal pier. This one gives you a green token. This gives you a red. That gives you a white, and that gives you a blue ribbon. These are just going to go into your play area. They will never go over into the docks. Also, when these come up, you're just going to be sliding to the left. Again, these will never actually fall off to the board. Up here, we have basically going to walk through the end of the game scoring. So any of the contracts and any of the coal that you still had left on your ships, you're going to convert each one of those into 20 pounds. Every 100 pounds gets you a point. Every house that you actually have out on the board, as well as all of your captains that are on ships on your board, those are each going to be worth 3 points. The last part of final scoring is actually pretty easy. Basically, what we're going to do is we are going to count up the total number of flags that we have for each of those columns, and then we're going to multiply that by the point value of where our last token is at. Don't forget that we also have wilds. So in this case, we have 2 wild tokens. And let's just say that we want to place them here with the green. We could place them anywhere that we wanted to, but clearly that's going to give us the most points. So just kind of walking through this, we have 2 blue flags. They're going to be 7 points apiece. So that's going to be 14 points. If we have no flags, then we get no points, regardless of where that token is at. So let's say that we got down here with our coal at 7 points, but we had no black flags. We'll get 0 points for that. However, with our green here, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, including having those wilds. So 5 times 10, that's going to be worth 50 points. We didn't get any of the white tokens, and we don't have any of the white flags, so we'll get 0 points for that. And then we had 1 red flag, and that's going to be worth 5 points. You're going to take your captain that you had on the rondel, and when you're figuring out points, you're going to add those out to the scoring track on the outside of the board. Whoever has the most points wins. And that's how you play Crossing Oceans. So now let's get to what I think. I want to start off by saying that I had and played Transatlantic for years before Crossing Oceans had come out. And I enjoyed Transatlantic. However, there were a few fiddly things. And if you want to see the comparisons between what was in Transatlantic and what we got in the upgrade kit, you can check out our video on our YouTube channel there. But I have to say that I do prefer the changes that they made for Crossing Oceans. I think it has streamlined the game quite a bit. It's made the process of doing a lot of this stuff a little easier. It still takes about the same amount of time. I've played this, I think, at all player counts, and I really enjoy it at a 3 and 4 player count. But it is going to take some time. The last 3 player game that I played, I think, took about 2.5 hours. That was teaching a new player. The last 4 player game I played, again, I had to teach, and I know that game took well over 3 hours. Of course, keep in mind too that the people that I had played this with, they were not what I would call a lot of experienced gamers, but everyone has enjoyed this. Now, like I said, I have the upgrade kit, which was half of the cost of getting Crossing Oceans by itself. So let's talk components first. A lot of people are going to ding this on the paper money. I actually think this paper money is really cool. And I've seen a lot of implementations of paper money in other games, but this one actually did it right. This is also the money that was used in Transatlantic, but I just think that the money looks really cool. There's, different looks and colors for each of the denominations. The cardboard tokens are nice. They're good and thick, and they're easy to understand what they are. The wooden components themselves are nice. There's our captain. And the trade houses kind of look like little Monopoly buildings. In fact, they might even be the same size. The real beauty, I think, is in either side of the player board. Again, most people are choosing this side because it looks less busy. I actually kind of like the other side. You don't have to put the components on the board, even though, it shows, well, this is where the 10s go, and that's where the 20s go, and that's where the contracts go. You can have those off to the side. You don't need to put them on the board. And maybe that would make it less busy, but that's kind of a personal preference. But I think the real beauty is in the art of the ships. I believe I showed these off in our unboxing, so I'm just going to show a few here, but you can just see that the art of these ships is just stunning. I do want to show you the Titanic. There it is right there. Looks really sharp. So you can see it shows you the flag that you get for that, the year it came out, the name, the amount of income, the cost, the speed, 23 knots, and the tonnage, 47,000 tons. You can see some of the other ships there. So a lot of them look very similar. Takes on designs. And all these are based on real ships. Now, if you own Transatlantic, then you also had this Age of Steamships. I don't know if this comes in the full version of Crossing Oceans or not, but stories and history of all 50 vessels which sailed in Transatlantic. And it's going to tell you a little bit about each one of those ships. So it's really cool. I've gone through, and I haven't read through all of them, but there's a lot of good information there. And then you can see all of the different ships and the information on the back of that. And while I said this is an economic game, I don't actually have very many economic games in my collection. But this was one, like I said, I really liked Transatlantic when I got it, and I really like the changes that they've made for Crossing Oceans. I don't think I would ever play Transatlantic again. I think I would always just play with the Crossing Oceans rules, but I really enjoy this. There's a lot of forward thinking in this. You got to have your strategy kind of outlined, what ships you want to go for, where you want to try to be at in the different sea areas, getting your trade houses out, getting your captains out, especially at the end of the game, because each one of those on the board is going to be worth 3 points, which is actually quite a bit. So a lot of different ways that you can kind of go about doing that. You can spread yourself out, like I was showing on this player board here. And this is kind of one of my main strategies, is I tend to try to load up on whatever one that I have the most ships in, which obviously makes sense because that's going to get you more points. But I've seen other people that score just as well, spreading out and having a variety of ships in their fleet. I think all of the different actions gives you some flexibility. So I really enjoy the gameplay in this. I love the art. Like I said, the components are really good. So I'm giving this 2 thumbs up. So if you like ships, you like historical type of games, you like economic games, I think this one is going to be one you may be interested in checking out. But that is Crossing Oceans, and we will catch you guys next time. Thanks for watching our video. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, click that like and subscribe button. You can also follow us on social media like Facebook
and Twitter at DadVDaughter.
And if you like what we do and you want to support us, you can visit our Patreon page. So thanks for watching.
Thanks.